Hi, and welcome back to this Thursday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Great to have you in the conversation. Talk about a range of topics today. Just got breaking news from New Mexico that their Supreme Court has imposed same-sex marriage on the people of New Mexico, completely ignoring the will of the people. So once again, you see this judicial tyranny, judges imposing. And these are the people that tell us you can't impose your values on anybody. That's wrong. You can't legislate morality. It's wrong to impose your values on anyone. Well, apparently that just applies to us. You know, we're not allowed to argue for our values. We're not allowed to work to see our values enshrined in public policy, but they get to do it all they want. And they can even have a judge do it against the will of the citizens in where he exercises his jurisdiction. So New Mexico Supreme Court legalizing sodomy-based marriage in the state of New Mexico. Geraldo Rivera, by the way, coming out for Phil Robertson today in his defense. Well, let's pick up a phone call as we start this segment. Let's go to Mark in Columbus, Ohio. Number to call, by the way, if you'd like to weigh in on some of the topics we've talked about today, particularly the Duck Dynasty uproar. The number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Mark in Columbus, Ohio. Mark, welcome. What's on your mind?
First of all, I want to give you a word of encouragement. Keep moving forward.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
And, yeah, you can do it. Just keep moving forward. It won't last that long anyway. We don't have too much longer to go.
That's right.
I have a problem when people keep saying they're offended, okay? Because the reason why is if I call you Brian, are you offended?
No, you know, and we'll go ahead. Finish your thought because I got a response to it.
Okay, that's because the truth doesn't offend.
Yeah.
It only shows who's for it and who's against it.
Yeah.
So
what you're saying, what you're saying is if you are a lover of the truth, then the truth isn't going to offend you.
That's okay. Well, in arithmetic, 1 + 1 is 2. I mean, nobody's offended by that.
Mm-hmm.
If I call you Brian, you're not offended by that because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I call you an American, you're not offended by that because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the truth does not offend. It only shows who's for it and who's against it. So these people that keep saying that they're offended, they're not really offended. They're in rebellion against the truth.
Mm. Well, that's an interesting thing. So that's an interesting angle to look at it. What that manifests, that resistance to when somebody declares the truth, it's not really outrage, it's not pain, it's not hurt. It's a manifestation of a spirit of rebellion against the abiding moral standards of God himself.
So I cut them off. I said, wait a minute, I didn't offend you. I just told you the truth.
Yeah. Well, you know, you think about that, you know, go back to and the truth is homosexual behavior is a sin. I mean, that's the truth. That's just a plain, simple fact of it. How many words is that? Homosexual behavior is a sin. That's 5 words. That's like 1 + 1 is 2. It's a sin. You know, if that offends you, it happens to be the truth. It is immoral. It is unhealthy. It is unnatural. And that's a simple statement of the truth. And so Mark's point, our caller's point, if that offends you, then that just indicates that you are in rebellion against the truth, that you are somebody that rejects the truth. You don't embrace the truth. You reject the truth. You resist the truth, and you're in rebellion against the truth. All right, Mark, that's a great comment. Anything else you want to add?
No, have a great day. Have a great Christmas. Have a great New Year.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and Merry Christmas to you as well. Number is 888-589-8840 if you want to join the conversation. Let's play one more clip. This is clip number 3. Talked about this a little bit yesterday. Got some liberal media types together. And the interesting thing is they all admitted, they were asked, does the media lean to the left? And every one of them, without having to think about it, said yes. And then one of them, I didn't jot down his name, but he's in the left-wing media, is one of the major media outlets in Washington, D.C., and he explained why in his circumstances, it's very difficult for him to be objective as a journalist because he lives in this tiny little bubble. Let's listen.
I live in Northwest Washington. None of my neighbors are evangelical Christians. I don't know a lot of people in my kids' preschool who are pro-life. I just think, and I think when you do have conversations in all the newspapers I've worked at, about politics. Doesn't happen often, but you see clues that there is absolutely a leftward lean.
So he says, look, I'm just wrapped up in this tiny little bubble. I don't know any evangelicals. There are no evangelicals that live in my neighborhood. I hardly know any pro-life people in my kids' school. So these liberals, I mean, these are the most, they complain about homeschoolers not being socialized. And we had this judge, we talked about a couple weeks ago, this judge issuing a ruling that these homeschoolers had to be put in a public school because they weren't being properly socialized. They weren't mixing with a wide enough variety of people. Well, who needs to be socialized? It's liberals. It's journalists. You talk about people that are closeted. You talk about people that walk around in these little tiny bubbles with no interaction with real people, with ordinary people, with ordinary Americans. They are it. Anybody in desperate need of socialization, it's the left-wing media. And Rob, if you can drop down and grab clip number 10, that MSNBC clip, this kind of illustrates the same thing that we are talking about, this insularity of the media and how far they lean to the left. Now, listen to this MSNBC host talking to a Democrat, and what I want you to listen for here is the pronouns that this journalist, MSNBC, the pronoun that he uses in talking about Obamacare. Let's listen.
Now, according to the White House, today's push is all about the success of Medicaid expansion. 26 states and D.C. have taken advantage, while 24 states, all run by either Republicans or Republican legislatures, have declined the expansion. I also want to point out these stats the White House just released. If all 50 states were on board, 5.4 million uninsured Americans would gain coverage. 8 in 10 of those would be paying less than $100 a month, all of which would actually save states about $10 billion over the next decade. So my question, Congresswoman, is what are we doing to get that message out there a little more?
Did you catch that at the end? Talking to a Democratic congressman that passed this bill, voted for it, they enacted it, they're trying to implement it. He's supposed to be a member of the journalistic class. These are the people that are supposed to be objective, they're supposed to be neutral, they're supposed to be trying to get at the facts. They're not supposed to be on anybody's side. And what does he say? Last question he asked, what are we doing? Not what are you doing? Not what are they doing? Not what is the Democratic Party doing? The last thing he says is, what are we doing to get that message out just a little bit more? Now, the news on the Obamacare front is just disastrous. I mean, we have never seen, this is the Hindenburg, it's Chernobyl, it is Hiroshima. You can't come up with a metaphor that's strong enough to describe what a catastrophe this thing is for healthcare. I'm not saying the same number of people are going to die in this that died in Hiroshima, but it's that kind of a catastrophe in the medical field, in the world of healthcare. I've got a story here about the number of state directors that have had to be fired because the state exchanges are so absolutely miserable. 2/3, this is a poll from Fox News, 2/3 of the American people want Obamacare delayed. They know this thing is a total disaster. And Fox News has Barack Obama upside down 41-53 approval versus disapproval. With independents, he's upside down 2-1, 31-60 independents are against him. Young voters, even worse than the general public. His favorable, unfavorable with young voters, the millennials, 37-53, 16 points upside down with the millennials. And 67% of the American people said, look, 2/3 should Obamacare be delayed for a year until more details are ironed out. 67% yes. Only 28% said full steam ahead. So this Obamacare thing is a total catastrophe. Here's a story out of California where the state sent out 113,847 botched eligibility notices. So these people, 114,000 Californians, getting these eligibility notices in the mail that had blank spaces. They didn't even know what was supposed to be in those spaces. There was supposed to be something there that was going to determine whether they were eligible for subsidies or not, and the spaces were left blank. So they have no idea where they stand. There's 114,000 of them. In some cases, the notices said the applicant was eligible for coverage but not eligible for something else that was unspecified, with only a blank space at the end of the sentence. You are eligible for blank, and it doesn't tell you what you're eligible for. The forms also omitted other key details, including tax credit amounts and whether the person was eligible for Medicaid and so forth. 114,000 of them, they got to send out corrective notices on the way. Now, this woman tried to sign up in the Maryland website, and the major newspaper in Maryland came out with a piece yesterday. This whole thing's got to be scrapped. This is a liberal newspaper. You got to scrap this whole thing and start. Well, it's too late for that. The deadline is next Monday, the 23rd. That's Monday, right, or Tuesday. The deadline, you got to have your money in order to be covered by January 1st. It's Tuesday, right? Is December 23rd. Monday's the 23rd. So Christmas is on Wednesday? Okay, I guess I'm all mixed up on my dates here. So anyway, you got to pay for your insurance by Monday if you're going to have it by January 1st. And here's a breast cancer survivor in Maryland. Her name is Lynn Backlor. She's been trying to enroll through the state's busted Obamacare health exchange, and their health exchange director just got fired this week because he was off for a 2-week exotic vacation in Costa Rica right after the rollout of Obamacare, when their whole exchange was in total meltdown, and he was off having a fling in the Caribbean resort with another official that was over the Obamacare implementation rollout. So the two of them were having an affair together. They go off and have this exotic vacation while the entire state exchange is falling apart around them. So she's been trying since October 10. She's a breast cancer survivor, so she wants insurance coverage. She can't get on. She talked to 10 different Obamacare workers trying to get this thing worked out. The only thing that she got was a question that asked her, this is a security question, what's the first name of the boy or girl that you first kissed? So that's the only security question she's even been able to answer. This whole thing is a total catastrophe. Got a piece in the New York Times about the professional and cultural elite in New York getting hammered by Obamacare. They didn't think it was going to happen to them. They are getting drilled to the wall, and this is the guy, remember, that Barbara Walters thinks or thought was the Messiah. Focal Point, AFR Talk.